Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another one of devCodeCamp's Alumni Spotlights. I'm Carl Peterson, devCodeCamp's social media producer. And last couple of days, admittedly, I've been a little under the weather, but this is one that I absolutely could not miss. And I'm sure by the end of this, you're going to agree as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get this kicked off. I'm going to start this with the same three questions I do with everybody. So there's a three-parter. So first off, what's your name? When did you attend devCodeCamp? And what do you currently do for work?
Okay, it's good to meet you, Carl. And so I attended my name is Brady Cotton, and I attended devCodeCamp from March through June of 2021. And I am currently a full stack software engineer for Flexion Incorporated.
That's excellent. Thank you. That was you're gonna do great. Yeah, it's nice to meet you as well. I realize that this is the first time we've ever spoken virtually face to face, so this is definitely going to be a good one. And I found out right before this that we live 45 minutes from each other, so we got that going for each other too. You mentioned you're a software engineer. What does a typical day for a software engineer look like for you?
Yeah, so it's surprisingly a lot like the code camp was. We start out every morning when we have an agile style stand up to where we go over sometimes we go over what we got done previous day. Majority of the time it's over what our goals are for the day and kind of hash out who's going to work on what, and then kind of also catch up everybody because we're a very tight knit team, and it's a great way to start the day. And then we go into a stand up with our client and kind of do the same thing, hash out the goals for the day, and then dive right into it.
Yeah, hit that ground running mentality. That's definitely the developer kind of way, right? And it's funny that you mentioned kind of it's like Dev Code Camp because there's a reason behind that, right? We structure it so you're ready kind of day one as much as you absolutely can be. So that's great. I have a question I absolutely love hearing. It's actually my favorite question, actually asking graduates, which is why coding? Everybody has a different story. What was that original interest point for you?
So now I'm gonna caveat here. The original what got me on the boot camp was, believe it or not, a random guy in a garage I was buying a pool table off of. But because I've done several things from military to sales to quality, and I wanted something that wasn't after quality. I wanted something that wasn't quite so mundane, and I wanted something that would keep my interest and keep me challenged, especially mentally. So I thought back to the 3 years I spent in college that I was putting towards an IT degree, and my favorite part of that was the programming classes I took. And then prior to speaking to that guy in his garage, I was planning on going back to college to finish my 4-year degree in computer science. And after our conversation, he was actually a software developer and that had a 4-year degree, and he told me he highly suggested that I look into boot camp. And yeah, and then I got to researching boot camps, and especially once it took GI Bill, and devCodeCamp was definitely at the top of that list, and it's actually the first one I looked at. Now I looked at several others, but none of them stacked up in any of the reviews or anything I looked at. And I definitely completely agree with what I researched, and I've suggested it to several people, and I am wholeheartedly very glad that I took that leap of faith.
Well, that's always good. Be a little awkward if you were like,
Yeah.
But no, that's great. Now you kind of turned into that guy telling people in the garage, picking up pool tables, like, hey man, you got to check out. Well, that's fantastic. That's a good story. Kind of, it sounds like you kind of stumbled into it
Yep.
in some ways, and that's a great play of cards you had there. You mentioned these two things. First off, the military can't continue without saying thank you for your service. Secondly, did a little searching. Obviously, this is first time face to face, but I was checking out your LinkedIn just to prepare for this, obviously, and I saw that you oversaw and taught some teams during your time in the military. Obviously, being a developer, teamwork is a extremely heavy focal point.
Mhm.
You know, you even mentioned that in that first answer of what software engineer, you know, what your day looks like. Um, Now that you are officially in the industry, how much of that mentality from teaching those teams while you were in kind of transferred naturally for you into coding?
Oh, it was, I mean, there's it just straight from one to the other. I mean, so especially on our team, so we do a lot of paired programming or mobbing, and so there's, and believe it or not, even as a in a more junior role that I am, it's the way we work is we do a driver navigator, and to where you switch off every 5 minutes to where you're the one calling the shots and the other person's running the keyboard. And you'd be amazed how well that builds your teamwork. And it also gives you the chance. There's a lot of times where you get the chance to actually teach some more senior developer stuff that they may not know, especially being newer to the field. You learn a lot of newer little tricks and stuff. And now there we have a new cohort of apprentices coming on, and I've actually got the chance to be in the interviews with some of them and to work with some of them, and just to be able to extend them to the teamwork that I had on my team or whenever I came in as an apprentice, and to be able to work like that and to just integrate them into the team. And that's one of the core things with our especially our company, because it's all about our teams, and but just software development as a whole. It's you're going to get a lot further working as a team than trying to do everything solo.
Oh,
And it's
absolutely.
amazing what you learn. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And that's another great thing you touched on. You know, tips of the tricks of the trade is a huge part of the, you know, because such a big part of being a developer is trial and error, right? I mean,
Mhm.
that's 90% of
Yep.
the job for the most part. So you know, finding out little tiny things that help somebody else, that's huge. And I figured that was going to be your answer. But yeah, teamwork is a huge focal point across the board, just like you mentioned. Let's talk devCodeCamp a little. What would you say was your favorite part of the course? Not necessarily talking about, you know, a lesson plan or anything like that. Just overall, what would you say you really enjoyed the most?
Okay. So now this, at the beginning, it was a little difficult, but I grew to love it. But that's what made me the developer I am, is that you're never going to get the answer. And so, but the ability that all the instructors had to guide you without ever just giving it away and making so you, but then you still, what I love about that is whenever you figure that out or finish that project, you still get that whole sense of accomplishment without feeling like you got it the cheap way. And just and the whole aspect of that, I mean, you grasp it so much better because they're so skilled at asking you the right questions, but also teaching you how to ask the right questions to get the information you need to be able to figure that out yourself and to learn at the same time. And that's definitely a skill that I've taken with me, and it's helped a lot.
That's great to hear. That definitely is a really good answer. You mentioned something actually that's a really good segue. During the course, you're learning so much in such a small amount of time. Challenges are going to come up, you know, whether it be large or small. It's tough sometimes because, like I said, such a small amount of time learning so much, which is great. You know, at the end, it's like whoa, you know, which is the
Mhm.
whole concept of Dev Code Camp. But I was wondering if during those times of maybe struggle you mentioned, was there a moment that you can recall, and it's okay if not, this is a very specific question, but was there a moment you recall where it just kind of clicked where you're like, okay, I'm on the road to becoming a developer? Like, was it a moment where you were just kind of like, okay, I got this?
Yeah, let me think about that for a second.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, it's a very specific question. So,
Yeah. So, and a lot of it, so, and that's one thing about this is you're never gonna get over your imposter syndrome. And but some of like I guess like the proud moments, some of them came after kind of after I graduated and I transitioned into the career services. And I was doing an interview with a company. It's actually not far down the road from us in Siloam, and I got talking about my capstone, and they gave me the opportunity to present it to them, and they were extremely impressed with that, and then they could not wrap their heads around how only doing coding for 3.5 months I was able to knock that out in 7 days, and that so that gave you definitely a swell in pride and realize, okay, I'm further down the road than I think I am in my mind, and it definitely backs you up on thinking, okay, I can definitely do this. This is I'm not faking this. It's and that leads back to the imposter syndrome, and that's one thing that came up in almost every interview is, and I would ask them, I was like, dude, does it ever go away? And they said, absolutely not. And so, but it's just little things like that. And then like after this apprenticeship I did, uh, coming out of it, they were extremely impressed. And uh and yeah, so I mean it's just you hit milestones all the time that you realize, yeah, like I know what I'm doing, and I am a developer, and it's a great feeling.
yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, those little moments of confirmation throughout the way go.
Mhm.
They play a big part sometimes, right? You
Mhm.
mentioned the Capstone Project. I think it's fair to say that those are very impressive because of just like you mentioned. I mean, you learned coding and in a very short amount of time,
Mhm.
and then in a 10-day sprint, you were able to create something that is very impressive. Capstone projects are always a highlight because
Mhm.
not only is it at the end, which is always exciting for the student, but also it's just exciting to be like, well, this is everything I've worked
Yep.
towards. This is a product of that. I was wondering about your capstone project. If you don't mind giving me a little details on what it was, because I actually don't have knowledge into that. I'd love to know,
Mhm.
and also what your mentality was kind of approaching that large project, kind of no chains, big project, end of course. What was the mentality going into that?
So I'll start out. The mentality going into that was kind of frantic because whenever whenever I first started the course, I told my wife she'd stick with me through it. I'd take us all on a vacation as soon as we got done. And I kind of had an error in scheduling that, and I scheduled it a week too early. So I actually only had 7 days to do mine, and I had to end up. I ended up presenting my capstone from a hotel room uh, in Destin, Florida. But it all worked out because, but with the skills they taught me, I had the most confidence I could get it done in 7 days. I knew it would be a couple late nights, but um, yeah. And as far as the project itself, so I was a sniper in the army, and so long range shooting and hunting out west is a big passion of mine, and I wanted to kind of put those two together. And so I came up with a project that, and a lot of people said that they didn't see anything anywhere similar to it. So that was kind of cool. Is it's a ballistics calculator basically, to where you would put your rifle builds from your scope to your bullet weight to your twist your belt, everything into it, and you could log into your own profile and it would save it to your profile. And I incorporated my wow factor on it was I incorporated the Google Maps API to where you could actually click it would you click one button, it would mark your location on the map, and then you click anywhere on the map and the info window would pop up and give you the adjustments for your rifle build. on how to adjust your scope, just right there. And so, and where I really made that for the application for that was like out west, like elk hunting, because me and my family go elk hunting every year. To where if something's next valley over, you just click it and it tells you how many yards away it is, and how to adjust your scope for that yardage. And then I also did a range card to where if you're at a known distance range, you can also just pull that up and you don't have to click on anything, or you just go down the chart and it'll tell you your adjustments in like 5-yard increments or 25-yard increments. And you can adjust the increments too.
That is incredibly impressive. Is this something you use? You said you go elk hunting, obviously, but is that something you use in the in the field rather? That application, do you use that?
I've tried it. There's a couple tweaks I got to make to it, but out to about 1,000 yards, it works pretty well.
That's incredibly impressive. You mentioned you were a sniper, obviously, which we've touched on a little bit, but that's an extremely analytical role. I mean, would you would definitely agree with that, correct? I don't want to speak for you. So that's also obviously a lot like the teamwork. I'm imagining those analytics kind of naturally, that analytical mind rather, naturally was an easy transition for you as well when it came to learning code, was it not?
Yeah. And sometimes a little almost too much because you try to, it'll get you down the rabbit hole sometimes.
Yeah, it's easy to go off some paths and stuff. What was a way that you kind of realized to hone that in a sense of not going down the rabbit hole, not necessarily looking for like a mistake you made or anything like that, but what was your process of trying to find that easy median of, okay, this is the sweet spot I need to be in?
So yeah, it was a lot of trial and error at the beginning because it's getting in the mentality that they teach at DevCode is you get the MVP and then you make it better. And that took me a little bit to get used to because it's hard not to focus on the little details up front and try to make it perfect. And then but if you do that, you're going to be almost to the end of the project and you got one part of it done. And so, and that's something that, and we do every day is you make it work and then make it better. And, so, yeah, and that was, it didn't take me too long to adjust to that process, but it did take a little bit, in CodeCamp but it's definitely helped me in the long run because we're able every day. I mean, we're able, but it also helps you troubleshoot stuff. Is you figure out the simplest way to do it, and then you go back and you figure out the more efficient ways. But a lot of times that opens up other avenues that if you tried to do the more complicated way first, you never would have thought to do it. And sometimes something that if you would have started out taking you 50 lines of code and you just step back and say, what's the easiest way I can do it? You can do it in 3 lines of code. And it just makes everything run more efficient and it's less complex, easier for somebody else to come behind you and read, and just makes it easier for the whole team to work on.
Sure, sure. I'm obviously in marketing. I'm not a developer, but since joining devCodeCamp, that mentality is kind of shared across the board, and obviously in our courses and our and everything, but also kind of just in an everyday conversation with developers. And that's definitely something that has kind of come on to me, where it's just kind of like, well, just get it out, just get something out, and then from that point forward, then we can make it better. So that can translate to across the board for anything really, just because you spend a lot of time sometimes staring at the screen and trying to perfect the first try, and it doesn't always have to be. If it's ready to go, when it's ready to ship, you did a good job. So that's great. Brady, we're wrapping up here. I wanted to thank you so very, very much for getting this this time down and interviewing with us today. This was really great, very knowledgeable, very exciting. Like I mentioned in the start, I knew it would be. I had full confidence. So thank you very much. This was very enjoyable. Going to end with last question here, which is if somebody was watching that was on the fence of not necessarily even joining Dev Code Camp, just getting into code overall. Um, what would you say to them? And I know this could be a big question, right? It's come. It's the last one. You gotta end
Mhm.
with a bang. What would you say to somebody who was on the fence of like, man, should I become a developer? If they were in your garage right now picking up a pool table,
Mhm.
what would you say? And also, if you want to mention Dev Code Camp, that'd be great too,
Yeah.
because obviously you're a success story from these doors,
Mhm.
and it's been great to watch that success. So what would you say to them?
Yeah. So first off, just dive in and do it. It's so I had a real good I had a real good buddy that he actually he jumped in and went through it with me, and it landed him a job right here close. But and he had absolutely no previous coding experience at all, which and I had very little, and it was 10 plus years prior. So, and if you don't think you can do it, you're wrong. Like every single person I work with, not a single one of them came close to starting out their professional career in development and coding. I mean, there's people that, I mean, you have your mathematics degrees, there's people that was pharmacists, there's people that had a metallurgy degree. I mean, it's crazy. We had a guy the other day in an interview that he was a stuntman for Universal. It's and you'll meet, and that's another thing. You'll meet a lot of great people from a lot of backgrounds. And from what I understand, it's one of the most in demand jobs on the market. Uh, I know the last time I looked it up, there was like 23% more jobs available than there are developers, and especially and here's a nod to Dev Code Camp as far as when you come out, how impressed people will be. And I guess we had never really discussed how long the code camp was. And the other day, uh, the guy who's our team lead, we got to talking about code camp and stuff, and he just naturally assumed it was 9 months to a year long. And I just looked at him, I was like, no, Seth. I was like, it was three and a half months long. And he's like, there's no way. He's like, he said, you had to have had knowledge before. I was like, no. I was like, especially because I mean, the little bit of programming I did was in C++. So, and that's not any, and I don't use that today. So, like, it's basically I went in with a fresh slate, and that, I mean, that was to them and the whole team. Like none of them would have ever considered or realized at all that it was that compact of a time, and that I was able to learn and y'all were able to teach and get that much knowledge into me that I could practically use in that short amount of time. And it was great. And it is intense, but and they'll tell you it's 10 times easier once you get into the into your first job as it is in code camp. And I would say that's closer to 100 times. Like do the amount of work in a week that I do in a day in code camp, and that can sound intimidating, but it's not. Like it's it's an amazing learning environment, and you can, I mean, just get into it, soak up as much as you can. Important thing, learn to ask questions the right way, and that is one of the quickest ways you'll learn. But absolutely do it. I've had several people that are looking to change career fields right now, and they are strongly considering getting in software development, because hey, where else can you, when you get paid this good, to work at home? Because most of the jobs are at home, and you can, if you're one that wants in the office, you can work in the office too. But and it's been an extreme blessing for me to be able to work at home. I'm here when my kids need me, and I'm enjoying it to the fullest. It's been a amazing experience. I don't have I haven't had a single bad experience with it yet. It's it's great, and it'll definitely set you up for success for the rest of your life. I mean, it's something that you learn every day, so it doesn't you don't get that stagnant feeling, or it's not mundane. And I mean, a lot of people think that when they don't really know about it, they think staring at code all day, like, I'm gonna be bored out of my mind. It's like, no. And there's several days that it's the end of the day and I think it's lunchtime. And because you're just you get into it so engrossed in it, and it just keeps your mind sharp, and it's awesome. And the things that, and you won't believe the things that you can do, and just the things you can build for yourself, build for others. And yeah, I mean, it's a great experience all around.
I could not have said it better myself. What was that last part you were going to say?
I was saying, and definitely, I've talked to a lot of people, that everybody that was in my apprenticeship and this coming up apprenticeship, everybody went to different code camps, and we've talked at length about them, and and they all agree that I would definitely put devCodeCamp at the top of the list, because you definitely get the widest range of knowledge that's the most applicable to the market right now. And yeah, I mean, and you'll come out on top a lot compared to other boot camps. A lot of them, they just rush you through, try to teach you one thing, and you definitely come out of devCodeCamp very well rounded. And it definitely set me up for success.
Well, Brady, that's the ultimate end goal. So watching your success has been nothing but a pleasure for every one of us, especially your instructors and just the team as a whole. You're definitely a success story, and it's really a pleasure to speak to you today. Thank you again for making some time. We've reached the end. The interview flew by. I felt like I could have talked to you for a couple more hours, but
Yep.
we're close enough. Take me out one day and we can use that app.
Will do.
Brady, thank you so much, and thank you everybody at home watching or wherever you may be. Really appreciate your time as well. So until next time, I'm Carl Peterson. Brady, thank you so much again.
Thank you, Carl.
Bye bye, everybody.